Good morning, welcome back to the channel. My little Mac Mini is generating quite a lot of interest on the internet. The videos I've already made, I've made two about it. First one just describing the fact I got it, and the second one showing some disk speed issues that I've noticed and how they'd influenced my desire to upgrade it already to an internal higher speed disk, or at least a larger capacity disk. So what I want to do is switch across to videoing the screen, and I want to show you the effects of how Lightroom interacts with the Mac 1 Mini. And this is still the 8GB model that I've got. The one that's got 16GB and the 2TB internal drive arrives on Tuesday. So when that arrives, I'll obviously do some more testing, but the whole point of this exercise is to help you guys understand exactly how Lightroom works and interacts with the system that you're using it on. And what I've already established is there is actually a sort of a recommended way of doing this. So let me go over to the computer and I'll capture the screen, talk you through what it is I'm doing, and let you guys see the results that I'm seeing, because I think this is quite an interesting set of results that I've already sort of established, and I think it will benefit you guys in understanding how to configure any Mac you buy moving forward that runs on this M1 and later subsequent versions of the M1 silicon chip. So let's without further ado go over to the computer and then we'll pick up from there. Okay, so before we actually go onto the screen and I show you the results and the effects of how I use the internal disk, I want to show this to you. Now this is a little external expansion device which has got 1, 2, 3, 4 USBs, 2 USB 3s and 2 USB 2s on there, and also a micro SD and a normal SD card slot. It doesn't have anything else except a connector on the other side to connect it to the M1 Mini, but underneath, if I turn it over, you will see there is a little panel, and underneath that panel there's a dock for an SSD, and exactly like this 2TB SSD that I've got here, I have two of these and they're mirrored, so I've taken one of them out and I've actually put it into that unit. It's identical to this one, so those can be fitted in there underneath there in that little hatch when those screws are undone. And basically I'm connecting this up to the M1 Mac, which I'll show you in a second. Okay, so here we are, we've got the little M1 Mac at the bottom here, and we've got this expansion unit sitting on top of it, and as you notice they're identical shape and size, which makes the whole unit look really quite neat and tidy. Here's a power lead going into the M1, and then around the back we've got a connector cable connecting the top unit to the bottom unit, and then we've got this white HDMI cable which is running up to the monitor up here. And that is the configuration that I'm working with. So the internal SSD, which is in the top unit, is a 2TB internal SSD, as I just showed you, as in one of these crucial 2TB drives, and these are rated at approximately 500 megabytes read and write per second, which is in itself quite good. But as you probably noticed on the video I did the other day, the internal SSD in the Mac Mini can read and write up to nearly 3 gigabytes per second, which is between 4.5 and 6 times as fast as I can read and write to one of these. So I don't expect the performance of this internal disk to be at the same level as the internal disk. I use the word disk, but they're not really disks anymore, it's just chips, essentially memory chips. Anyway, let's switch across to screen capture and let's see how we get on with that. Okay, here we are. I've got the desktop up on my Mac Mini, and up on the top right hand side is my external disk drive. And on the external 2TB disk drive, if I just run up the disk utility program, we'll be able to see that. Where is it? It should be in here. Disk utility. Right, the disk utility shows us the disks that are connected to the system at the moment, and what we've got in here is the internal drive, which as you can see is 251 gigabytes, and that's got only a small 89 free at the moment because I've loaded a load of things which I'll go into in a minute. And then the external drive, which is 2 terabytes, as you can see here, that drive is currently sitting at about 1.25 terabytes used. Okay, so the 2 terabytes drive is the one that's in the external plugged in expansion box. So I'm not expecting that to run particularly fast. So what I'll do is I'll run up the DaVinci disk utility to show how fast that does run. And that is in here. So if we choose the internal drive again, as I did the other day, but I'll do it to re-emphasize. So anywhere on the internal drive, we should be good to go. So let's just choose desktop and say start. And we're seeing write speeds of nearly 3 gigabytes per second and read speeds of nearly 3 gigabytes a second. That is the speed that you can expect the internal drives on these Mac Minis to work at. It is not the speed you'll get from the external drives. Any external drive is going to be limited by the speed of the connecting cable, and in this case it's Thunderbolt 3, which should be able to read and write quite quickly, certainly at these sort of levels, but it's then down and limited to the speed that the disk itself that you're talking to can read and write at. So if I move to choosing the external drive, which is the images drive, and then start that, what we will see is 300 write speed, and probably something pretty similar as a read speed, which is approximately a tenth of the speed. And that's significant. That really is significant, because anything that needs to access that external disk is going to have problems going any faster than that. Well, it won't go any faster than that. So let's just close that down. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Lightroom catalog, and consequently all my images are on this images directory, and also I've got the Lightroom catalog on there. And this is an important distinction, because where the Lightroom catalog exists can directly affect how quickly your system works. Well, I sat down at the computer and I did an awful lot of tests, importing and exporting catalogues to external drives, internal drives, and so on and so forth. And it added up to about 12-14 minutes worth of video. So rather than actually put you through the pain of watching all of those key presses and mumbles and fumbles on my part, I thought I'd summarise it and save you the problems. In essence, what I've concluded is that as long as the Lightroom catalogue and its associated files are on a fast drive, and by fast drive I mean the internal SSD on the Mac One Mini, the location of the actual images themselves to a large extent doesn't matter, because it's hardly ever pulling those in. But what it is doing is it's accessing the catalogue, it's updating the catalogue, it's updating the settings and everything that you're making while you're doing the developing and adjusting of the images. But the basic images don't need to load as quickly as they possibly could if they were all located on the internal drive. So in essence, what I'm saying is, as long as you've got a reasonably good large external drive, you can get away with probably a 256 or a 512 SSD inside the Mac Mini, depending on how much other stuff you want to put on there other than photography and videos. But my I won't recommend, that's not the right way of putting, but my finding is that as long as you've got the Lightroom catalogue actually on the fastest drive, that is fine. Now, I caveat what I'm saying, this is all Lightroom related. For those of you out there that do video like I do, that does require high-speed disk, and that is the main motivation for the reason that I'm updating that Mac Mini over there in the corner to the 2 terabyte version, because I deal in gigabytes at a time of videos, and those do require to actually be processed quickly, and being able to access them efficiently is highly advantageous to me. So in my case, as a video content producer, it makes a lot of sense me having a very large internal SSD to get the benefits of the speed. But for those of you out there that are just using Lightroom and editing your images, the benefits are not there in having the speed of the internal SSD for large image quantities. Typically I've got about 1.5 terabytes of images on my main disk, and no, it's not 1.5 terabytes, it's more like about 1.2 terabytes, spread across 43,000 images, most of which are DNGs or RAW files. And the Lightroom catalogue that backs, or at least gives me access to all of those, is only of the order of about 47 gigabytes. So you can see 47 gigabytes will easily fit on even a 256 internal SSD. A 512 would be overkill. So for those of you that are really not interested in video and that sort of the requirements that video place on your system, I suggest, or at least I would look into the 256 or 512 version of the Mac Mini. However, I would say go for the 16 gigabytes of internal RAM. I think the benefits, you can't upgrade it, so go for the larger one that you can get. It's not a lot more money, and it will mean that you'll be able to run several concurrent power applications at the same time, like Lightroom, Photoshop, and so on and so forth. So that's the conclusion. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it's been informative, and I hope you guys take something away from this. If you have any questions, drop them in the section at the bottom, and if you like the video, give it the usual thumbs up. Everyone stresses this on YouTube, but it is actually quite important because it helps the YouTube algorithms actually promote your videos so that other people can see them. So it's not so much about whether you like the video or not, it's about actually helping to promote the channel, and as the channel gets promoted, I benefit indirectly because I have more subscribers, and ultimately I will receive at some point, hopefully, a tiny income from this. Well, those days are probably way off into the future, but anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.